أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. We thank the Almighty Allah for this opportunity to be here. We thank Him for His mercies that He's bestowed upon us. We bear witness that there is no deity worthy of worship except the Almighty Allah alone. And we also bear witness that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam is his servant and his messenger. Whosoever the Almighty Allah guides is really guided, and anybody who goes astray has nobody to blame but himself. Today is a Saturday, not Sunday. The 6th day of Dhul Hijjah, 1447 years after the Hijrah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, which also corresponds with 23rd day of May 2026. Alhamdulillah, we are in the 10 days of the Hijjah. In these 10 days, we said yesterday in the khutbah and even last week's class that these are the best 10 days in the year. And we said comparisons between these days and the days of Ramadan are that these days are the best day times of the year. And then the last 10 nights of Ramadan are the best nights of the year. So the kind of energy and zeal that we put in the last 10 nights of Ramadan, let's also put in these first 10 days of the Hijjah. And today is the 6th day. Of course, there is a major activity in these 10 days, which is Hajj. From the look of things, I don't think any of us has any intention of going to Hajj this year. Because if you are flying tomorrow, Monday is the beginning of, the days of Hajj, Yawm al-Tarwiyah. So you never know. Maybe someone of you has a private jet that he can just jet out tonight and then go for Hajj. But it is also, good that even though we are not at Hajj, or we've never been to Hajj before, or we've been to Hajj before, it is a good reminder as to, some of the activities of Hajj and some of the, preparations a person must make before going for Hajj. And then we'll look briefly at some of the, rites or activities of Hajj. And then at the tail end, we'll look at Qurbani, because it's something that, I believe most of us here will do in this year, inshallah. So, before anybody must embark on going to Hajj, we must understand that Mecca as a city has different rules and regulations. I don't mean the Saudi Arabian laws. That's what I mean. I mean the rules and the laws of the Almighty Allah. There are specific rulings in Havertown here or Upper Derby that are totally different as compared to that in Mecca. For example, if you find a lost item here and you pick it up to look for the person, in some narrations you look for the person for 3 months. After those 3 months, it becomes yours. Even if the person comes back later and says, this belongs to me, the fact that you spent those 3 months looking for the person, it becomes yours. And even if they take the case up to a qadi and you're able to prove that, listen, I got this 3-4 months ago and I've been looking for the person, the qadi will automatically give it to you. In another narration, it is 1 year. But the main point is that if you find a lost item here in our city here, after a period of time, not you hide it, no, you look for the person. You go to public places to look for the person, it becomes yours. But then in Mecca, if you find a lost item and you pick it up to look for the person, you look for the person till the day you die. It never becomes yours. So that is why you find all those, brothers, in uniforms in and around the haram. If you find something, you give it to them. So some of the scholars are of the opinion that if you find something, a lost item in Mecca, leave it there. Don't even touch it. Leave it. And if you pick it up, you look for those brothers, who are in uniform, and then you give it to them, and they keep it safe until they find what? they found the person. I know of an auntie of mine who went to Hajj and then she lost, a purse that she had some gold chains and, rings in there. And after a couple of weeks in Makkah, she was able to get it back. She was able to get it back. So this is the ruling. So you must understand that going to Makkah is not like, you're going to just any place. We have 3 groups of people who go to Makkah. The first person is someone who doesn't care about the qadasa, the sacredness of the place. So he goes to Makkah, instead of coming back home with blessings and rewards, he comes back home with problems. For example, you see the birds in the haram, you don't scare them. If you scare the birds in the haram, hush, there's a penalty for it. If you go to Makkah and then you go and argue with someone and you end up grabbing each other's necks and throats, there is a penalty for that. If you go to Makkah and then you go and hunt, there's a problem with that. If you go to Makkah and then you go and cut down a tree, a naturally growing tree, there is a penalty on that. So if you do not know all these things, and then you get up and then you go to Makkah, and then you pick up a fight here in Mina, and then you pick up a fight at Arafah, and then you pick up a fight at Muzdalifah, and then you pick up a fight in the masjid. You are doing tawaf and then you are elbowing people and pushing people around, and then when they talk, you are arguing, and some of these, penalties is you slaughter a ram. So imagine someone goes to Makkah and then they must slaughter a whole farm. Because of what? Because they had different issues and different problems. So some people go to Makkah, obviously, because of ignorance, they don't know. They see Makkah as, I'm going to see the Kaaba, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And they don't understand that there are rules, religious rules, between you and Allah. The Saudi, authorities will not be on your neck to slaughter the ram. They won't be on your neck because they will not be able to police every incident that you're doing. Some of the scholars are of the opinion, not even some, وَمَنْ يُرِدْ فِيهِ بِإِلْحَادٍ بِظُلْمٍ نُذِقُّ مِنْ عَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ. You see here, if you think of doing something wrong, here, you think of doing something wrong, and you don't do it, it is not a sin. But in Mecca, just the mere thinking of planning to do something wrong is a problem. So these are things that anybody who is going to go for Hajj needs to prepare themselves very well. This same group of people end up coming home without feeling anything. When you enter the masjid, seeing the Kaaba the first time in itself is very exhilarating. We're like, mashallah. And it's towering. You see it is big on the pictures and the video, but then when you enter into the haram and then you see, you're like, you have to take your head back to see it. And the atmosphere, it's a different feeling. And especially when the adhan is being called, the adhan that you hear on the radio, you hear on the television, on the social media, and then you hear that in itself is a different thing. And then you hear Allahu Akbar, Alhamdulillah. Sudais is reading the Quran, it's a different feeling. But you have to put yourself into it. You have to engage into it. You have to have the intention. So someone goes to Hajj and comes back and says, what's the feeling? It's normal. No. If you really put yourself into it, wallah, you will feel it. If not for anything, you lose some pounds on the scale. Because it's an act, it's an activity. You do a lot of physical work. So that's the first group. The second group of people, they understand that Mecca is a sacred place. They understand that. But then they exaggerate in the acts and in the activities that they are supposed to engage in. I'm going to go to Gharul Hira. It's not part of Hajj. But there's nothing wrong that you want to go to Ghar al-Hira. I'm not saying it's haram. No, don't get me wrong. But that it's not part of Hajj. Don't give premium to going to Ghar al-Hira, going to see where the Prophet ﷺ was born, or going to Ghar al-Thawr, or going to Ta'if, and going to all those historical sites. You put energy in there, you put importance and significance in there. But when it comes to Tawaf, it comes to Sa'i, it comes to Arafah, it comes to Muzdalifah, you're already exhausted by going to these other places, and then you don't have enough energy and then passion and then concentration for the main act of Hajj. So it's important we understand that. The other thing also is that for the first group of people who, have this negligence, is that when you enter into the haram, if you're not careful, the moment you pick this thing up, you are done. You are done. The phone. MashaAllah, alhamdulillah, labbaik Allahumma labbaik, labbaik la sharika laka labbaik, innal hamda. First tawaf done. First sa'i done. MashaAllah, bismillah, Allah akbar. You're stoning shaitan. You must be stoned. During the act of Hajj, put this thing away. Turn it off. Or, I don't know what emergency call you receive there. You're not a doctor that needs to do surgery. At that point in time, I don't think there's anybody who has to call you to say no. The moment you come into the haram, you're going to start your tawaf, either for Umrah or for Hajj. Put this thing off. Switch it off. That's it. When you finish and then you want to take pictures, that's fine. When you finish and then you want to take a video, that's fine. Even though I'm not in line with picture taking and stuff like that, unless there is a dire necessity for it. But in the act of Hajj or Umrah, of Tawaf, you see people with their phones. I don't know, I saw a communique that said, the authorities are going to clamp on that this year. I don't know how true that is. But for your iman and for your concentration and for your reward, nobody needs to know you finished first tawaf. Nobody needs to know that. Nobody needs to know you are on number 6 or number 7. Nobody needs to know you are kissing the black stone. Nobody needs to know you are at Maqam Ibrahim. Nobody needs to know you are doing Safa and Marwa. Nobody needs to know. The one who needs to know already knows. Oh no, I'm trying to educate people, Mr. Principal. Who made you the principal to educate people on that? There are a lot of documentaries. If people want to learn Hajj and Umrah, there are documentaries that have been made. The scholars have done videos on that. We already have that. You don't need to worry yourself saying, I need to educate my people. Who made you the messenger to educate people? Nobody made you that. You've gone there for a purpose. Stick to it. I remember in one of my Umrahs, when we entered, I told the people with me, I said, listen, forget about the phone. Put it in your bags. Turn it off. And let's stay together. If you find yourself not with us, don't worry about it. Continue the tawaf. And after tawaf, we will be behind Maqam Ibrahim doing our sunnahs. We will stay there for a couple of minutes. We'll meet there. But if you come and then you don't meet us there, we are going to do Safa and Marwa. And we'll wait for you at Marwa when we finish Safa and Marwa. So one of these, brothers, we were doing, and after the, I think, first, circuit around the Kaaba, second or third, we couldn't find him. It was later that we found him. We asked what happened. He said, Sheikh, you said don't take the phone. But then the feeling, I wanted to take a picture of the Kaaba, the feeling. I said, I told you, if you want to take a picture of the Kaaba, wait after we finish the tawaf. You have access to take the picture. At this time, you are here for ibadah. It's like you are in salah and then you say you want to take a selfie in salah. It doesn't add up. So let's be very mindful about it. Let's guard against it. So the second group of people are people who go up and beyond what is recommended. And they do extra stuff that, it's not asked of them. And then they put in more energy and more effort in that than in the main act of Hajj. The third group of people are people who are very, conversant of what they're going to do. They understand that, listen, Mecca is not like any other place. If I'm spending 15 grand to go to Mecca, and I have extra 5 grand in my pocket for my own, dealings, I'm spending 20 grand. This is not small money. That's one. Number two, I'm taking a jet, flying all these hours to go there. Ultimately, top on the list is I'm here to serve the Almighty Allah. So I need to take my time to go through the processes the right way. If I have questions, I ask them even before I move. I have a sheikh, my local imam in my mosque, whatever imam I have. Imam, I plan to go to Hajj this year. What are the rites? How do I do them? If the imam can pen something on a paper for you, keep it with you as a what? As a supplementary, information that you can use. Even if the imam can do an audio for you. At this point, this is what you're supposed to do. So he might do maybe 3 minutes audio, 3 minutes audio, 3 minutes audio, 3 minutes audio for you on every act of what? Of the Hajj. And then you label it. You have it on your phone or whatever. And you get to the place before you start that. You play the audio once, twice, 3 times. You understand what's going on. And then you what? This is what? The kind of people we want you to be before you go to what? Before you go to Makkah. That you understand that, listen, this is serious business. And there's a reason why the Almighty Allah made it only once in our lifetime. It's only once. If you do it one time, that's it. Allah is not going to question you about it on the day of Qiyamah. But if you have the means to go multiple times, there's nothing wrong with it. And if you do not have the means to go to Hajj, wallahi, don't have sleepless nights over it, because Allah is not going to question you on the day of Qiyamah. You should have a problem if you have the means and then you do not go. That is when Allah is going to question you. But if you don't have the means, you don't have to have sleepless nights over it. So this is just an intro to Hajj. I want us to go straight into the act itself. We have 3 types of Hajj. So you should know which one you're doing. And all 3 are different. They come with different rulings. They come with different activities, even though it's the same Hajj. The first one is Ifrad. Ifrad means you are doing only Hajj. There's no Umrah in it. Only Hajj. That's one. The second one is Qiran. Qiran is you are doing Hajj and Umrah with one niyyah, with one intention, together, with one ihram. The third one is Tamattu'. Tamattu' is you do Umrah, you take off the ihram, you put on your normal clothes, and then on Monday, which is Yawm al-Tarwiyah, the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, you put on the ihram for Hajj. You see the differences? The first one is what? Ifrad. Ifrad is only Hajj. There is no Umrah in it. But after Hajj, if you want to do Umrah, that's fine. And what is Ihram? Ihram is both the garment and the intention. And there are places and times where you can take what? The Ihram. It's not everywhere. For example, Jeddah is not a place for Ihram. So if you do not make your intention of Hajj or Umrah, let's say you are from Egypt, and you are flying directly from Cairo to Jeddah. On the way in the flight, if you're going straight to Mecca from Jeddah, there is a point in the Red Sea today. It used to be a land, but I think the sea has taken over. I've forgotten the name of the place. Where you have to take the intention before you cross that place. If you cross that place without taking the intention of Hajj or Umrah, and you land at Jeddah, and you cross from Jeddah and then you go to Mecca, you must slaughter a ram. There is a penalty for that. So that's why if you land in Jeddah and then you want to do Umrah or Hajj, you either have to go to Medina and then come from Medina, from, what you call Abyar Ali today. It used to be called Dhul Hulayfa during the time of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is where you take your ihram, you put on the ihram, and then you what? You say labbaik Allahumma hajjan or labbaik Allahumma umratan, depending on what you're going to do. So there's a place for it. If you cross that place, you have to what? Slaughter a ram as a penalty. So if you're going to do ifrad, if your intention is ifrad, and you are traveling, let's say you get to Medina, now you are in Medina, and you're going to go to Mecca, let's say tomorrow morning. From Medina, you leave your hotel, you get to, Dhul Hulayfa, if you're going by bus or if you're driving. If you're going by train, you can just, put on your ihram from your hotel, you get to the train. In the train, as you approach the miqat, there's going to be an announcement in the train that, listen, you're approaching miqat, so start taking your what? Start taking your ihram, start doing your niyyah, your intention. If you're going by bus or you're going by car, if you get to Dhul Hulayfa or Abiyara Ali, as it's called today, it's a whole rest area, huge place, where you prepare and then you take on your ihram and then you take what? You say your intention. Labbaik Allahumma hajjan, if you are doing ifrad. Labbaik Allahumma hajjan. And then you start moving. Labbaik Allahumma labbaik, labbaik la sharika laka labbaik, innal hamda wa ni'mata laka wal mulk la sharika lak. Don't be a rookie Hajj who doesn't know that between Mecca and Medina is a long trip. So don't spend your early energy, labbaik Allahumma labbaik, labbaik Allah. After 30 minutes, you're sleeping in the bus. No, take your time. If you are tired, you sleep. There's no problem with that. If you get to Mecca, of course, they'll take you to your hotel and stuff like that. But you don't sleep. Because if you enter Mecca, the ruling of entering Mecca with ihram is tawaf. You have to go and then greet the house. Not greet. It's tahiyyat, of course, the Arabic language. So I'm translating it into the English dialect. So even if you are doing ifrad, you go and do tawaf 7 times around the Kaaba, and you don't do Safa and Marwa. Because you are doing what? You're doing ifrad. The tawaf that you're doing, tawaf al-qudum, is the tawaf of what? Of approaching of someone who is coming. And then that's it. You're going to still remain in the garment. You are doing ifrad. Let's not forget. You remain in the garment. And then on Monday, if we are going to Mina, you go to Mina with everybody. So let's pause here. For the one who is doing tamattu, doing Hajj and Umrah together, same thing. He gets to Medina, he's coming. So let's take Medina as our starting point. He gets to the place Abiyar Ali. He will say, Labbaik Allahumma hajjan wa umratan. The first one says, Labbaik Allahumma hajjan. Only Hajj. But the second person, he says, Labbaik Allahumma hajjan wa umratan. So they are all in the same bus. So this guy doing ifrad is in the bus with him. This guy doing qiran is in the bus. When they get to Mecca together, they will both go and do tawaf around the Kaaba. But the first guy will not do Safa and Marwa. Okay? And the second guy will what? Will continue doing Safa and Marwa. And after he finishes, they hold hands and then they go home. They go to the hotel together. And they will both remain in what? In the ihram. They won't take it off. Until Monday, that they will all go to what? They go to Mina together. You understand the difference? The difference is that this second guy will do what? Safa and Marwa. The first guy will not do Safa and Marwa. For the third guy, when he gets to Medina, if he's coming at Dhul Hulayfa, he will say, Labbaik Allahumma umratan. Umrah. He's only going to do Umrah. The first guy will say, Labbaik Allahumma hajjan. The second guy will say, Labbaik Allahumma hajjan wa umran. For umratan. And the third guy will say, Labbaik Allahumma umratan. So when all of them move from Medina through Dhul Hulayfa, they all get to Mecca. They all go into the masjid. They all do tawaf around the Kaaba. All 3 of them. But when they go to do Safa and Marwa, the first guy will not do Safa and Marwa. He waits for them. The second 2 guys we will go and do Safa and Marwa. And then the three of them, when they go to the hotel, the first two guys will not take off their ihram, but the third guy can take off his ihram and then put on whatever clothes he wants to wear. You see the difference? So on Monday, now the third guy is now going to take his intention for his Hajj. So he say, Labbaik Allahumma Hajjan. Now, no, he doesn't have to go out of Mecca. He can take his intention from there. So he now puts on his ihram. And then the three of them get into a car or they get to a bus and they all go to Mina on Monday, Yawm al-Tarwiyah. In Mina on Yawm al-Tarwiyah, there is nothing specific. Any form of ibadah, reading of the Quran, dhikr, whatever you can do in Mina for on the 8th day, you can do it. So all three guys will be engaged in the same act on Yawm al-Tarwiyah. On Tuesday, which is Yawm Arafah, they move from Mina and then they go to Arafah. So this is the major pillar of the Hajj. If you miss Arafah, there is no way you can make it up until next year. That's why the Saudi authorities, Jazahumullah khairan, may the Almighty Allah, safeguard them and bless them for the kind of work that they are doing. It's not easy. I was looking at, some of the, resources that they put. The electricity that the Masjid al-Haram consumes is more than the electricity my country, Ghana, consumes. That they've provided. I was like, man. Of course, you might have your whatever criticism of the Saudi authorities, whatever. That's natural. That's fine. No human being is perfect. No government is perfect. But at least the kind of attention that they give to the two masjids, as yourself, that they are not playing when it comes to the masjid. So at Arafah, they even perform surgeries at Arafah for people who are sick. Because if you come for Hajj and then you are sick, and then, because of one or two reasons, you're not able to go to Arafah, then it affects your Hajj. So they make provisions to transfer people who are Hujjaj, and then they're not feeling well, maybe malaria, maybe, some sickness, makeshift hospitals there to take them there so that you must be at Arafah before sunset. So even if you are at Arafah for an hour before sunset, Alhamdulillah, you've had Arafah. You've had Arafah. If you are not at Arafah before sunset, then the Hajj for that year for you have to come next year. And Arafah is a plain. It's not only the mountain. So when you go to Arafah, it is not compulsory for you to go and climb on the mountain. It is not. You don't get any extra reward for climbing the mountain. You don't get it. Understand that. So don't go pushing people and struggling and then, worrying yourself, I must be on the mountain. If you have the energy to do that, fine. Some of us are in the tents teaching people, talking to people, so we don't have time to say we're going to go onto the mountain. We don't have that time. But if you have, the energy and then you want to, go to different parts of Arafah, fine. There's also Masjid Namira. There's a masjid in the Arafah plains where the khutbah, the main Arafah khutbah is being said. And the way they structure it is that, different countries and different places that they're being put in, at Arafah, so that you don't get missing. Imagine someone like me, I'm thrown into people from China, and they don't speak English, I don't speak Chinese, I don't speak English. How are we going to communicate? So they have a very well structured. So you see billboards there, South Asia, like Arab Africa, so the North African, Egypt, Tunisia, and then so they're able to structure it in a way that is very nice, that it's very, very, very easy to maneuver. So on the day of Arafah, the moment the sun sets from Arafah, you move to Muzdalifah. So some can go by bus, some can go by car, but it's easier if you have the energy to walk because of traffic. So the people who have cars, especially, the diplomats and stuff like that, they have their cars at the edge of Arafah, the boundary. So the moment the sun sets and then, the sign is given, they move. So in 10 minutes they are in Muzdalifah. And then those of us, Ibadullah, the servants of Allah, we walk. But alhamdulillah, for me, we were able to stay behind, at Arafah, just to make sure that our Hujjaj, from our country, everybody leaves Arafah. We don't want to leave anybody behind. So we ended up even staying behind and even falling asleep. We left Arafah way later in the night. So we got a bus. And then almost, majority have already gone. And then we got to Muzdalifah. When you get to Muzdalifah, Muzdalifah is also a plain. And you sleep on the floor. When I say on the floor, it doesn't mean literally, on the floor. But you get a mat. So if you're not an experienced Hajj, if you live in Arafah and then you leave Arafah with your 10 fingers, if you get to Muzdalifah, you're sleeping on the dirt. So at Arafah, you see some people are taking mats, some people are taking, blankets, and you're like, what is wrong with these people? Everything is fine. What is wrong with you? And you go and then you spend the night at Muzdalifah. So it is recommended that you pray Maghrib and Isha at Muzdalifah. That is why you leave Arafah right at sunset. You pray Maghrib and Isha. Now, how long was it? I didn't walk. So, I don't remember exactly. But it's not that much. Maybe within that range. So, you get to Muzdalifah. Muzdalifah is a humbling place. And if you wake up at night when everybody is sleeping, it's scary, wallahi. You know why? You wake up like this and then everybody is in white and like this. And you think you are sleeping with corpse. It's a humbling experience. Where your head is, that is where someone else's foot is. With your power, with your money, with your whatever. The Almighty Allah, when He made us to go through Hajj, it's a culmination of different experiences and, to humble you. If you wake up at Muzdalifah, I tell you, when I woke up at night to go and use the bathroom, and they have bathrooms, all of them outside. When I woke up and I sat down, for a moment, I needed to find my glasses. I was like, what's going on here? The person next to me was sleeping like this, all white, covered. It's just a sea of white. And you would think that, man, what's going on? It's frightening sometimes. So, you pray Fajr there too. Right after Fajr, now you move from Muzdalifah. Where are you going to? You are going to Jamarat. You're going to do the stoning. For this, I remember we walked for almost an hour or more than an hour. But it was at a steady pace. Alhamdulillah. And they were able to provide washrooms along the way, provided water, pipes along the way, and people were sharing water and food and whatever along the way. So, and the streets are very wide. And the way they did it is that if you're going one way, it's one way. You don't have to be going back and forth. They did very well. So you move, and then you get to, Jajamara. You go and stone the biggest one. You go 7. And listen, of course, you're stoning shaitan physically there. But the act itself is spiritual. Because if you take the stones and then you throw it at the Jamarat, symbolizing that you're stoning shaitan physically, and then spiritually you don't stone shaitan, then you don't understand what you're doing. That's why you don't need a gun and you don't need a catapult. You don't need any instrument, and then you don't need to go far away as if you are throwing shot put or javelin at the Olympics. Sometimes you see people's pictures. No, you don't understand that. So you don't need to take, and it's not about huge stones, it's just pebbles that you take. Bismillah Allah Akbar, Bismillah Allah Akbar, Bismillah Allah Akbar, Bismillah Allah Akbar. It's symbolic, but you also have to understand what you're doing. It's not just a mere physical truth. Yes, you do the physical act, so you wouldn't say that, okay, shaitan is not there, I don't see shaitan, so what's the significance of, stoning, Of course, Allah knows you don't see shaitan there. The Prophet Muhammad understands that, but then the physical act is reminiscent of what? Of the spiritual acts that you are engaged in. That if you go through it physically, you must understand that there's what? There's a spiritual part of it. When you do the stoning, after the 7, you have 2 options. All 3 of them, all 3, they have an option. They have 2 options. Either they continue from there and go straight to the masjid, the Kaaba, or they do a U-turn and go back to Mina, to the tents. I took the first option. Because if you go back to Mina, you will still have to come back to the masjid and do your tawaf, and then what? Your Safa and Marwa. You get it? So right after stoning, there is a pathway. We continued again. By foot. Another hour. Listen, you can see the clock tower. If you are in Mina, you see the clock. Wherever you are, you will see the clock tower. And then you think it's at lows until you start walking. You walk, and then you come up a hill, and then it's far again. So we went until we get to what? We got to the masjid. We got there. So that is the day of Eid. So we are on Wednesday now. So let's backtrack a bit. On Monday, 8th of Tarwiyah, we all go to Mina. We sleep. The following day, 9th of the Hijjah, we go to Arafah, which is Tuesday that is coming. From Arafah, right after sunset, we move to Muzdalifah. We spend the night at Muzdalifah. The following morning, 10th, that is Wednesday, we go to what? Mina, to go and stone the Jamarat. Right after stoning Jamarat, we have 2 options. We go back to what? To Mina. If you go back to the tent, then you take off what? The ihram, and then you put on your normal clothes. That is tahleel al-sughra, taking off. You still have some prohibitions, but not much. You take it off, and then you can have your hair cut, and then you can slaughter your animal. Now, so you stay in your ihram from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, after stoning the Jamarat, you take off what? Your ihram. We'll get it. For 3 days. Now, for those of us who said no, we won't go back to Mina, to the tent. We'll go to what? The Makkah. We'll go to Makkah. We'll go to the masjid. We continue. We get to the masjid. When we get to the masjid, we'll go and repeat the tawaf. Now this is tawaf al-Hajj. All 3 will do tawaf al-Hajj. When we got there, they finished the Eid prayer, Eid al-Adha prayer, and then they were closing the courtyard around what? The Kaaba. We're like, if you're going to do tawaf in this building, that's going to be too much. Come and see us racing. Because we could see that they're bringing the barricades to close it. I was the penultimate person. There was one person behind me. I crossed, they closed it behind me. I turned and I grabbed him over the fence and I put him in. He said, Sheikh, you are strong. I said, what happened? He said, you picked me like a baby. I said, I don't even remember doing anything like that. He said, wow, you're strong. I said, no, it's the situation. It's not that I'm strong. Because we are moving together. If we lose you, you have a problem. Because he's not someone who understands the Arabic language, who understands, Hajj and something like he needed help. So now we're going to do tawaf, 7 around the Kaaba. And then we're going to do Safa and Marwa, all 3, Safa and Marwa. And then we go to the barber shop. Because there's a barbering shop in the haram, in the masjid. in the hotels. You go there, you have a clean shave. Tas! Finish. Then we went to our hotel in Mecca. We took off the ihram. We put on ordinary clothes. But we'll have to go back to Mina and spend the night in Mina. Because the Hajj activities is not yet over. The major rites had been done. So on that day, we had to go back to Mina. We took a taxi, and there are designated cars that go into Mina. So the taxi was able to take us to what? The borders of Mina, and then now we walked another 2 hours to our tent. So that is Wednesday night. You spend the night in what? In Mina. The following day, Thursday, you spend the night in Mina again. On Friday morning, the Hajj activities are over. Come again? Yes. Thank you. Yes, so the slaughtering of the animal. So for those who went back to Mina, or for those who will go to Mecca to go and do, on that Wednesday you can slaughter. Wednesday, you can slaughter. You can slaughter on Thursday, you can slaughter on Friday. The Eid days themselves, Ayyamut Tashriq is 4 days. 1 plus 3. 1 plus 3. So Ayyamut Tashriq is 3 days, sorry. Ayyamut Tashriq is 3 days. Ayyamut Tashriq are the days after the day of Eid. So the day of Eid this year is Wednesday. So Ayyamut Tashriq is Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, these 3 days. And these 3 days, including the day of what? Of the Eid, are days that you can slaughter. Because Prophet ﷺ said, Ayyamut Tashriq, Ayyamul Akl wa Shurb. These days it is haram for you to fast. So, thank you very much for the reminder. So, on the day of Eid, after you finish the stoning, and then you go back to what? To Mina, to the tent. The guy that we started with, the first guy, he doesn't have to slaughter. He doesn't have to slaughter. The second and the third guys, they are the ones who slaughtering is what? It's part of their what? Of their manasik. I hope you get it. The second and the third, they will have to slaughter. But the first guy, no. If he chooses to slaughter, fine. That's up to him. But then it is not a part of his what? Of his right to slaughter, because he's doing what? He's doing ifrad. He's doing ifrad. So, when we went back to Mina, let's say on Wednesday night, when we went back to Mina, we spent the night there. On Thursday, we spent the night. Now, we're not in Ihram. Because after you, so for the two options that we said, if you get to the Jamarat and then you do the stoning, two options. Either you make a U-turn. Actually, it's a U-turn. It's a U-turn, actually. You make a U-turn, you're going back to the tent. Because you must understand that when you come from Muzdalifah, when you spend the night and then you wake up in the morning, you do your Fajr, in going to the Jamarat, you pass through your tents. The street passed through the tents of Mina to get you to Jamarat, and then you do the stoning. So in coming back to the tents, you just make a U-turn and back to the tents. But if you want to continue to go and do your tawaf and then your sa'i, your safa and marwa, and then your haircut, you continue. You have that option. You go. But if you go to Mecca, you will have to come back to Mina and spend the night in Mina. Without ihram. You've already taken off your ihram. So stoning, doing the first stoning is a sign that you can take off your ihram. But the next day, you have to come back and do the stoning again. Now. Yes, so when you do the first stoning, and then you do a U-turn, and then you go back to your tent, and then you take off your ihram, you put on your clothes on Wednesday. On Thursday, you have to come back and do stoning of all the three, because there are 3 places that you do the stoning. That's on what? On Thursday. You go back to Mina. On Friday, you come back and do the 3 stoning again, and then you are done for Hajj. But if you are still in Mina until sunset, you come back on Saturday again, and then you do what? You do the stoning before what? You leave what? You leave Mina. You get it? The stoning is 2 days apart from the day of the day of Eid. The stoning is 2 days apart from the day of Eid. So if you are still in Mina, so let's do it this way, because we don't have pictures. Explanation is on Wednesday. You move on Tuesday night. You spend the night at Muzdalifah. In the morning after Fajr, Wednesday, you come to Jamarat. You do the stoning. You don't go to Mecca. Let's take that example. You don't go to Mecca. You make a U-turn. You come back to the tent. You take off your ihram. You put on your normal clothes. That's Wednesday. You slaughter that day. If you don't have access to slaughtering, you've already paid for that to be done on your behalf. No problem. They do it. Alhamdulillah. That's Wednesday. You spend the night in Mina. The following morning, after Fajr, sunrise, you move to the stoning again. This time it's not one. You're stoning the tree. That's on Thursday. After stoning the tree, you make a U-turn again. You go back to the tent. On Friday morning, you come back. So the strategy is this. On Friday, the second day of stoning, you take your bags and everything, so that right after stoning, you leave Mina and then you enter into Mecca. Because if on that Friday, you don't pack your bags and stuff, you do the stoning, and then you go back to the tent, and then in getting ready, Maghrib sets in, you must sleep in Mina, and then go back the following morning and do the stoning again. So some people will do the stoning for 2 days, and some people will do the stoning for 3 days. فَمَنْ تَعَجَّلَ فِي يَوْمَيْنِ فَلَا إِثْمَ عَلَيْهِ وَمَنْ تَأَخَّرَ فَلَا إِثْمَ عَلَيْهِ لِمَنِ اتَّقَى. If you do your 2 day stoning quickly, تَعَجَّلَ, you are in a hurry, فَلَا إِثْمَ عَلَيْهِ, there's no problem. وَمَنْ تَأَخَّرَ, the one who is late, and that's the stoning for the 3rd day. Then after the 3rd day, even if Maghrib and Isha meets you in Mina, the acts of Hajj are over. The minimum is 2, and the maximum is 3. So what we did was that after we went to Mecca, did the tawaf, did the sa'i, went to our hotel, changed our clothes, went back to Mina Wednesday. The following day, Thursday, we went again, we did the stoning, we returned back to what? To Mina. Now on Friday, we know Friday is our 2nd day of stoning. That's the what? That's the least that we can do. And we know going there and coming back, so we gathered everything that we had. And after stoning, we went into Mecca, and then we finished what? Our Hajj. We had done. Because if we stay in Mina for the 2nd day until sunset, we'll have to sleep in Mina, and then on the 3rd day, we still go do the stoning, and the Hajj rites are over. So don't forget, we said you have 2 options after stoning on the day of Eid. You either go to Mecca, or then you turn and you go to Mina. So if you turn and then you go to Mina, and then you do the stoning for the 2 days, and then you come back to Mecca, don't forget you still have what? The tawaf and the Safa and Marwa to do. And then you don't need to do it in your ihram. You don't need to do it in your ihram. You do it in your everyday what? Clothing. Now, after you do that, you finish with what? With the Hajj. Now.
The Qurbani.
Now.
When people sacrifice the sheep over there,
Now.
people also sacrifice the following day.
Now.
In USA.
Now.
The question is come in line with the sacrifice the animal that we make it 3 portions, one for themselves, the meat, one for poor, one I forgot.
One for your neighbors.
But in America, it's very difficult to find it.
Your neighbor doesn't even want to greet you. How much more take meat from you? You want to poison him? So we'll come to talk about that because we have more time. I just want us to quickly finish the Hajj, and then we'll come and answer that, inshallah. So when the person finishes the Hajj, you stay in Mecca, but don't forget the rulings still apply. The ruling of scaring animals and fight still applies, whether you are in Ihram or not. So long as you are within that enclave, it applies. So now you know, okay, that's Friday, you're done. Let's say you were leaving Mecca on Monday. The last thing you're supposed to do is to go and do Tawaf al-Wada. Go and do a farewell Tawaf. Because don't forget, you have Tawaf al-Qudum. Coming in, you do Tawaf. Leaving, you do Tawaf. So Tawaf should be the major act you do before leaving Mecca. So you make sure that you have everything prepared, set and ready before you go and do what? The Tawaf. If after doing the Tawaf al-Wada, the farewell Wada, you ended up being engaged in other things that are major, then you'll have to do the Tawaf al-Wada again. So it's advisable. Now, of course, since we know when our flights are going to take off and stuff like that, and you know when you're going to leave for the airport and stuff like that, try and do your Tawaf early, because so that you'll be able to what? The only thing left is you're waiting for the bus that's going to take you from Mecca to Jeddah and to the airport, and then you leave. That is what? Tawaf al-Wada. So this is basically a quick rundown of Hajj, 5 or 6 days of work that we did in let's say an hour now.
So the first option when you went back to Mecca,
Now.
you did the tawaf, you did the sa'i, and then you shaved and took off the ihram.
Now.
The second option when you stayed in Mina.
Now.
When do you shave?
The same day, right after after returning to the camp, after returning to the tent, you shave.
You shave right there.
Yes, yes.
So
Now.
you don't have to be in Mecca.
You don't have to be in Mecca to do the shaving. Now.
How do you take shower with the
Yes, you can take shower with the ihram. You take it off. So for example, there is heat in the tent. You can go into one of the washrooms, take off the ihram, shower, dry yourself and put the ihram back on. The only thing is after you put on the ihram, you don't, perfume, put on cologne on yourself, but you can put cologne on yourself, on the ihram, before you make the intention of Hajj. You get it? But in the process of Hajj, maybe the ihram gets, dirty, you want to change it, yes, so you can have multiple ihrams, and then you can what? You wash it, you put in a new one if you want. Now. Yes, so so you should be very mindful of some of these soaps that are perfumated. But then if you do it unknowingly, then it doesn't invalidate your word. So that's why you don't need to have all those kind of stuff next to you. Just now, inshallah. Thank you very much for that question. Now.
when people making tawaf, Blackstone.
Now.
So the point they start.
Yep.
Some people start different gate.
Mm-hmm.
Some people enter the one gate.
Yep.
So when they come all the way to the point they start, so that means they did it one.
Now. No. If you're going to do tawaf, you must make sure you start from the black stone. So let's say this is the black stone, this part. And then you entered the masjid from this gate. So you're going to move. If you get here, that's your starting point. The starting point is not the gate through which you entered the masjid. So the starting point, you see that there is a green lamp on the walls of what? Of the haram. So it signifies a starting point. So if you can touch the black stone, fine. If you can kiss the black stone before you begin, fine. You can even put your forehead sujood on the black stone. All of this is part of the sunnah. You can do that. But then if there's too much traffic, don't bother me. I don't bother myself. I don't need any headache. And most often, I'm always at the periphery. I don't go inside where there is force and pushing. If I see that there is less traffic, that is when I begin to move in. And then you do so. When you start, you come back. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the starting point is not the gate that you entered through. No. The starting point is where the black stone is. That's the starting point. Now,
What about the rewards? You mentioned in Arafat will be the same if you go high, or what about the black stone? If you don't touch it, the rewards will be the same.
come again.
But I'm talking about the black stone.
Yep.
If you don't kiss it, if you don't touch it, or you go far away, are the rewards the same?
Yes, because the reason is that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if you can kiss it, fine. If you can touch it, fine. If you can do sujood on it, fine. Kissing or touching the black stone in itself does not increase the reward of the tawaf that you do. Umar ibn Khattab, when he, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw Umar, trying to kiss, the Prophet said, no, Umar, relax. You don't need to butter people to get there. If you kiss it, fine. If you touch it, fine. If you have a stick, a cane that you can use to touch it, fine. From afar, you point at it, that's fine. So it is not a requirement that if you go, you must kiss the black stone, and kissing it or touching it increases the reward. It doesn't in any way. And Umar ibn Khattab, even during his time, when he came to kiss the black stone, he said, أَعْلَمْ أَنَّكَ حَجَرْ لَا تَضُرُّ وَلَا تَنْفَعُ. I know you are a stone that you don't benefit and you don't harm. لولا أني رأيت رسول الله قبلك ما قبلتك. If not for the fact that I saw the Prophet kiss you, I would have kissed you actually. So there are, and if you look at some of the things in this religion, it's really the religion of the Almighty Allah. Because if kissing the black stone was a requirement in Tawaf, then the Hajj would take 1 year. Because 1 million people all are in line to kiss the black stone. 2 million, 3 million people. So imagine. So don't bother yourself to push people to go and say, I want to kiss the black stone. I saw a video of one brother. He even took off his ihram, was trying to push people. No. I hope. Now, so quickly, let's look at Udhiyah. So for those of us who are here, but in 10 minutes we'll do that. Don't worry. Udhiyah is not a big business. It's not a big deal. Last week we said that for anybody who had intention of doing Udhiyah or Qurban, at the onset of Zulhijjah, he shouldn't touch any hair on his body. We have two positions on that. The Hanabila are very strict on that. But there are three schools of thought, Malik, Shafi, and Abu Hanifa. They say it is makruh tanzihan. It's not haram. But then the Hanabila are very strict on that. And we talk at length about that because of the hadith from Aisha and hadith from Salama. So it's not something we want to go into it. So that's one. Number two, both males and females can do udhiyah, Qurban. And a female can slaughter if she wants to. Aisha radiallahu anha used to slaughter herself. So it is not something that is only, the work of men. Because sometimes I hear that, no, women are afraid of blood. Who told you they are afraid of blood? Excuse me. Who said women are afraid of blood? You're not afraid of blood. They see blood monthly. You, how many times do you see blood? You tell me women are afraid of blood. That's how one of my sheikh, with all my Allah forgive him, grant him Jannah, answered the question. I said, Sheikh, but the women are afraid of blood. He said they're afraid of blood. These people see blood every month. When do you see blood? I said, okay, it's true. You tell me they're afraid of blood. Just by the way, forgive me for using that analogy. So women can slaughter if she wants to slaughter. So that's two. Number three, of course, the person should be a Muslim. The person should be hur. So if the person is a servant or a slave, before that, the scholars are of the opinion that the Hanafiya say it is wajib upon anybody who can what? Who can afford. So if you can afford, according to the Hanafiya, it is wajib. But the Jumhur, Malik, Shafi'i, and Hanbal, they are of the opinion that it's sunnah mu'akkada. It's a very strong sunnah for any person who can what? Who can afford. But I'm of the opinion, I'm not disregarding these guys, but I'm of the opinion that let's encourage people to do it. Because is a good form of ibadah. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, there is no good deed greater or more beloved to the Almighty Allah on the day of Eid than slaughtering. This is the best deed you can do on the day of Eid. The salah, the giving of food, whatever. On this day, the best deed beloved to the Almighty Allah is what? The hadith is ما عمل آدمي من عمل يوم النحر أحب إلى الله من إحراق الدم. That the son of Adam has never done a good deed more beloved to the Almighty Allah on the day of Nahr better than what? Slaughtering. So encourage, the young people. And in some cultures, if you are not married, you don't do Qurbani. It is not true. That is your culture. That's not what Islam says. So young man, 25 years, is gainfully employed, he's not married, he has money, he can do Qurban. So let's encourage them. That's one. Number two, to answer, uncle, your question, that in distributing the meat, you divide it into three. 1/3 is for you and your family. 1/3 is for your neighbors. 1/3 is for the fuqara, the people who are poor, who haven't done it. But here is the case, let's say you live in a neighborhood where all of you have done Qurban. What do you do with the meat? To be able to, implement the hadith, give a meat to your neighbor. That's what the hadith said. Give a meat to give 1/3 of it to your neighbors. So you end up exchanging meat. And there's nothing wrong with that. Because they are your neighbors. Give them meat. And if you know of any faqir who is not within the circle, you can send some of the meats to them. But America is a complex place where we live in terms of neighborliness and people. Almost all of us are doing Qurban. So what you can do is the portion for the fuqara, for the poor people, you can bring it to the masjid. If the masjid have freezers that the masjid can keep it, and then from time to time the masjid can give the meat out to people who need it. That's one of the ways to do that. But if the third world countries that we come from, listen, sometimes back home the cow that we slaughter, by the end of the day we don't have anything left. And what we have left is the ram, the sheep. So my mother would say, the sheep, that is for the house. But for the cow, distribute everything. We give out everything. Because you have a lot of people who need. Let me tell you this funny story. I have a neighbor who is not a Muslim. And on the day of Eid, Alhamdulillah, in Ghana, it's a national holiday. So no school, no work, something like that. And my youngest sibling, he has these, classmates at school who are triplets. And on the day of Eid, what we do, we have a huge compound. Our house is half an acre space. So most of the neighbors who are Muslims will bring, their animals to our house to slaughter and stuff like that. So it's like a whole barbecue in the house. So as we are skinning, and we quickly get some of the meats, barbecuing, and then there's food being prepared. So the non-Muslims in the neighbor, they will come, and then we're all together working. But there's this non-Muslim neighbor who believed that the reason why we distribute the meat, because it is not, in some people's nature, it is not in their nature for them to give gifts. Why would I go and spend, say, $1,000 to buy a cow? And then I slaughter it, and then I'm cutting and then giving to people. He didn't understand. So for him, in his mindset, is that when we give out the meat, anybody who eats the meat, we are drawing their wealth spiritually. We are drawing their wealth spiritually. So that's why even his other neighbors who are Muslims who give him meat, he doesn't take it. He throws it away. So his kids will come to our house eating, and then when they come home in the evening, he will discipline them. Why did they go there? So one of the Eid, he was very furious. Look for the kids, he didn't find them. So he came to our house. When he came, the main gate, we had this huge gate left open. And then he peeped. And he saw the whole name. Everybody was there. He saw barbecue going on. And he stood aside, and then he saw when we cut the meat, we're giving it to everybody. The Muslims and the Muslim neighbors who had come, those who had come to help with work and stuff like that, even those who had come just for the meat and the food, we give everybody. He was quiet. And he believed that we don't eat anything of the meat. We give all out. And then he saw me pick a big chunk, put it in my mouth, eating. And then I saw him. I said, oh, say, come. He comes and I said, have a seat. Get him some meat. And then he was quiet. He ate, and then jollof rice was brought, and then we all ate together. Everything like that. And then we cut a big chunk of the meat, and then gave it to one of the sons, said, take it home to your mother so that when he was leaving, because he's an elderly man, old enough to even give birth to me. So when he was leaving, I wanted to just see him off. And he said, oh, Alaji. That's how they call, Muslims in Ghana, people who are well-to-do, maybe something like that. He said, Alaji, I have a confession to make. I said, what? I said, I believe that the meat, you give it all out. You don't eat any of that, any of the meat. And I believe, that's what I believe, that you want to take our monies, our wealth spiritual. That's why you Muslims are very rich. You're wealthy people because of that meat. But I came today and you are all eating from the meat. If the meat is evil, why will you eat it yourself? There's no evil. So I just wanted to say this. I said, no, don't worry. That's our religion. It is your right. In my religion, if I slaughter the animal, to give it to you. Only if you will accept. If you don't accept, I can't force you. He said, oh, thank you very much. Since then, every Eid is with us. So, in third world countries where we are coming from, it's easy. You can distribute. But here, we'll have to think of ways through which we can do that. So, for example, like ICNA Relief, anyway, I'm not doing advertisement for ICNA Relief. There's Holding Hands, there's Islamic Relief, they all do Qurban. So if you can give them the money to do the Qurban, fine, there's nothing wrong with that. You can give it to Masasat, foundations to do it, no problem. And you can do it on your own, no problem. If you do it on your own, you divide the meat into 3. If you have neighbors that you are friendly with who are not Muslims and they will accept it, no problem, you give it to them. For the fuqara, the poor people, even if they are not your neighbors. Okay, let's say you are in Havertown, you are in Upper Darby, and then you know a Muslim who is maybe in Philly, who you know, maybe he's even your employee at work. You know what he's going through, and then you can give that to him, not necessarily on the day of Eid, even afterwards, you get it to him, fine, you can give it to him. Or if the masajid can have, huge refrigerators to store the meats, the masajid should take it, put it so that from time to time, maybe once a month in the food pantries that the masajid have, they can say, okay, this Tuesday or first Tuesday of the month is what? Is for meat distribution or food distribution. It all falls into that because what? We are not in regular situations whereby on the day of Eid you can distribute everything. Sometimes me in my home, back home in Ghana, after 2 days we don't have any of the meat. All is gone. We've barbecued half, we've eaten half, we've distributed some. And alhamdulillah. So these are some of the situations that we find ourselves here in America. So yes, you can do your Qurbani here. You can send Qurban overseas if you have people back home that you can give them money for them to do Qurban back home. That's okay. If you can give it to the organizations that we have here, ICNA Relief, Helping Hands, Islamic Relief, whatever, you can give it to them. There's no problem. If you do it on your own, you still distribute the meat into 3. If your neighbors are people who are willing to take it, you give it to them. You've built a good relationship with them. You've been in the same block for 20 years. You've had this good relationship. You can talk to them. Listen, it's part of our festivities. And, I'm obliged under my religion to give you a gift from the meats that I slaughter. If you want to take it, I'll be very much willing to give. But if not, and don't worry, I'm not forcing you. This is not a force. Don't think that because of our relationship, I want to impose. Explain that to the person. If there's winning, fine. If not, 2/3 for you. Eat your meat. The 1/3, you find a poor person, you give it to them, or you bring it to the masjid as part of what? The contribution to the masjid to give it to the fuqara is something that you can do. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم. Can you stop the video so that we can get good questions? Top right end.